Welcome to the Laramie City Council work session, Tuesday, November the 25th, 2025. And we will start the work session by asking if there are any public comments on non-agenda item. Okay, seeing none, we will begin with our first work session. City Manager Jordan.
Good evening, Council. So we're going to start off tonight with just a presentation of some research findings that we have been working on for the past number of months. In the spring, we brought on some interns, and one of the intern projects that I had identified was looking into the next year, into 2026, and recognizing that our fifth penny or general purpose sales tax would have to be renewed. We thought we would look at our community partner grant program and determine in advance of that tax renewal what the value is in the community. So intern Samuel Bleisefer was recruited by us or came to us. I'm not sure which. I can't remember the order of events. And Samuel has been working over in the recreation department and then also in my office. He is a graduate of the University of Wyoming holding a bachelor's degree. And so we put together a research project to first survey our community partner agencies who receive funding through your grant program and get some data from them, and then use that data to conduct an economic impact analysis study to determine how those funds add value in the community and what the sort of return on our investment is in terms of wages and labor and value added for the local economy. So with that, I'm going to introduce Samuel Bleisefer, and he will walk you through the results of his research.
Thank you. Good evening, Samuel.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for letting me present this to you all. So let me test this. All right. All right, good evening, Council. I'm really excited to present to you what I've been working on over the past few months. So as Janine stated to you, I did an economic impact analysis of the Community Partners Grant Program. And, oh, I'm sorry. Right. And so the purpose of doing this analysis was to examine what impact providing funds to the Community Partner Grant Program has on the economy of Albany County in terms of very specific economic parameters. And then we do a return on investment analysis in terms of value added. And the main motivation for this analysis was examining the effect that our general purpose tax or fifth penny tax has on this specific area of the Albany County economy, because it will be on the ballot in 2026. And I think it's important to communicate that to taxpayers and to the City Council. And then I will just go over quickly what this report is not intended to do. This report is not intended to make any claims on the effectiveness of any community partner agency. It is not intended to make any claim on the opportunity cost of the use of these funds that are provided to the community partner program. It does not make any moral arguments for or against any funding decisions of the general purpose tax revenue. And it does not speak on any outcomes of the community partner program besides the one that are outlined in this very specific report. So first, just talking a little bit about the community partner program. As you all know, it is a city program designed to provide funding to lots of social service agencies in Laramie that provide a wide range of services, from social services to rent assistance to food assistance to education to recreation and a whole host of other social services. Although not all of them are nonprofits, many of them are nonprofits. And as you all know, it is funded by the general purpose / fifth penny sales tax revenue, which all of you decide on that amount. So the again, the general purpose tax, also known as the fifth penny tax, is a sales tax. About 10 million, almost 11 million was generated in fiscal year 2024. And in that year, about 2.1% went to the Community Partners Program. And the rest of it goes to capital investments, city operations, and other essential services to the community. And the voters will vote on the renewal of this tax in 2026. So I hope that the findings in this report provide a bit of more insight of how that how those tax dollars are used. So getting into the analysis, I used the RIMS-2 model. So the RIMS-2 model stands for Regional Input-Output Modeling System, and this is developed by the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which itself is a sub-agency of the Department of Commerce. And it is used to do regional economic analysis. So essentially, you pick a defined region which you want to study, and given that region's mixture of industries and consumer habits, they have these large input-output tables that track the flow of commodity inputs and outputs and the costs of those, and they are able to produce these very useful multipliers that you are able to do these economic analysis with. So these multipliers that we got will provide the change in certain economic parameters within Albany County alone. And these multipliers are very specific to Albany County because they have to do for the defined region that you define. So the inputs and outputs for this model. So the input, the data that you need is the change in final demand. So the change final demand is essentially the money that goes into an industry. So if you buy an apple at the store, whatever you pay for that apple is the change in final demand for that for the supermarket, not the apple industry. When the supermarket buys apples from like apple orchards, that money they spend is the change in final demand. So the change in final demand for this project is like the money that is given to the community partners, and also the money that they themselves have spent to provide the services that they do. And so this gives us a wide range of outputs. So the economic output is essentially the contribution to GDP that each of the industries contribute. So the output for, say, for libraries, that's how much of GDP they contribute to the economy. So if a library purchases a bunch of materials they need to keep the library operating, that money that they spend is counted towards GDP, and so that is their output. So value added. So value added is the main economic parameter that we're interested in for this analysis. So value added is the combination of labor and capital to put more value into an economy. And by that, I mean, so if you had a pencil and a piece of paper, you could get a pencil and a piece of paper for less than 50 cents about. But if you give both of those to a talented artist, they could use that pencil paper to create a nice piece of art. But now that is like worth way more than 50 cents about. So value added occurs at each level of production, at each stage of production for any output at all. So if you have a woodworker making a chair, that value added is seen through each part of getting the timber, refining the timber down to like workable wood, getting the tools together, and then when the woodworker assembles into a finished chair, you have like much more value than just the inputs alone. And so that is our main driver of wealth creation in this analysis for Albany County. So the total value added is all of those instances in which labor and capital is combined to create value, summed up in the county. So it also provides the change in wages. That income that is generated from value added will translate to an increase in salaries and wages to employees and the owners. And the change of that is calculated. So it's not like the total wages, it's the total net increase or decrease in wages. And then finally, with that income, if there's enough income for a business to hire someone else, that's a new job. And so this modeling system can also provide the number of jobs that are created within Albany County. So next are the RIMS-2 multipliers. So the multipliers are used with the change in final demand. there's a multiplier for each of those four economic parameters that I talked about, and you multiply that with the change final demand, and you'll get those four outputs. But the multipliers themselves are represented here. So for these types of economic impact analysis, there are three levels of effects. So you have direct effects, indirect effects, and induced effects. The direct and indirect effects refer to when you buy something at a store, that income they make off of that purchase, they use that income to buy inputs, pay salaries, and reinvest into their business. So if you buy a baked good from a bakery, they use that money to purchase more inputs from a whole host of other suppliers in the economy. And that like initial first round of spending is the direct effects. And the indirect effects looks at all those other suppliers, and they use that income to get their own inputs from even more suppliers. So if you have a bakery, they need to buy flour for their baked goods, but then the people they buy the flour from need to buy other inputs to make that flour. So you kind of get this whole like web of income from a single purchase. And that's what the type 1 multipliers measure in the RIMS2 analysis, or the RIMS2 model. It's the sum of the direct effects and the indirect effects. The induced effects, which are measured by the type 2 multipliers, refer to the extra income that the workers will spend money in the economy with. So all this income will eventually translate to increased wages in the workers in all of these industries. And these workers will eventually spend that money in other stores in the economy, which will then recreate that ripple effect again. And the induced effects measures that. And then the total economic impact will be the sum of these two multipliers, or similarly the sum of all three of those levels of effects. All right, so the investment type, which is the same thing as change in final demand. I'll be using the word investment because change final demand is, it takes a while to say, and for this analysis, it's functionally the exact same thing. So there's two types of investments for this analysis. The type A investments is the exact amount of money the city of Laramie gives to the community partners, which is the money that you guys approved to give to the community partners program. And then when a community partner gets that money, they have the opportunity to use that money as a match to pull in even more money from other grant agencies. So if they ask that they put down a match, they can use their community partner grant fund to secure those extra grants. And a lot of community partners did that. And that's the money they actually spend. So the type B investments are much larger because that's all of the money that they pulled in from our money. And that's the type, and the type B analysis that's the investment I used to do the analysis with. So type A was the money that we spent, but type B was the money that was spent in the economy. And so you'll see later that produces very high returns on an investment. So I won't go into all the assumptions in detail. Those are all in my report in more detail. But I will say that in order for the math to work out on the RIMS2 side, they have to make a lot of assumptions so that their input output table actually works properly with the multipliers they produce. And so those assumptions are listed under the RIMS2 assumptions, but then there are also assumptions that we had to make on our end in order to do this analysis. So I'll go over those in a bit of detail. The first one is the agencies are providing us accurate information. I'll talk about this later, but I surveyed all of the community partners and they provided me with all of the necessary information to do this analysis. And so we just have to trust that their information was correct. All of the agencies providing extra grants exist within Albany County. So like I said, with the leveraging of the funds, I'm making the assumption that all those additional grant agencies exist within Albany County for that to work, but that may not actually be the case in reality. The next one is all of the money that they say that they used was actually used. So all of the money was spent and all of the money actually flowed through the economy the way we expected it to. And then agencies don't adjust their spending patterns. And by that, I mean, it could be the case that an agency might adjust the way they're going to spend money in anticipation to the Community Partners Grant Program. If they expect to get it, they might change their distribution of funds, or if they don't get it, they might change it, but we're making the assumption that they're not going to adjust that proportion of spending. All right, so I'm going to go through a very condensed and kind of summarized version of how I did this report, but it's all outlined in more detail in like the my paper version. So first, we got the RIMS2 model. So we had to buy those from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and so we defined the region as Albany County. I didn't define the region as just the city of Laramie because it's recommended you do that for large metropolitan areas, which Laramie is not. So, and with all of Albany County, you can capture a bit more of the industries that may exist outside the city limits. So that's why I refer to the Albany County economy rather than the Laramie economy. And then we also had on hand data that goes over how they usually spend money and how they spent the money that we gave them. So for each application they send in, there's a clause, or not a clause, but just like a little question that asks them, like, how did you use last year's money? And so I used that to break down how they spent the money. And then they also have a income and expense table, and I use that as well. And so, like I said, I broke down the spending by industry. So each line item that they bought things with, I matched that with this particular industry in the RIMS2 model. And if the and so sometimes the agencies are clear about how they spent the money, and sometimes they're not clear about how they spent the money. If they weren't clear about how they spent the money, I use that expense table to make the assumption that that money was used towards normal operations of the agency. But if they specifically said we bought this thing with it, then obviously I would use that industry. And then using data from the U.S. Census Bureau, I applied retail margins to appropriate industries. So if an industry bought things at like Walmart or other like retail stores, you have to like take off a retail margin that kind of represents the transportation costs and the other costs of getting the product to the consumer. So you just kind of have to deduct a little bit of money for that to make sense. And that's outlined in the RIMS2 model that's necessary. And so all that kind of goes into the final spending. So it's the type B investments with a little bit of retail margins deducted off. And so that is all used in the RIMS2 model. And then I built an Excel tool that automatically applies the industries with the correct multipliers. And those will automatically do the calculations. And so that's what I use to calculate all of these impacts. So there's some industries that, although they exist in Albany County, they don't actually have an impact because all of their inputs exist outside of Albany County. So that translates to a leakage. And what a leakage is, if money is spent outside of Albany County, then that money is just taken out of the economy. It's just lost to us. So if you bought something in Casper, that money is removed from our county. It goes into Casper. And so that will decrease the impact if there's significant purchases made outside of Albany County. And so that's already taken into effect in the multipliers. They already have that figured out. So it'll just have like a 1 for the multiplier on the output and then a 0 for the rest of it. And then so all those results are summed to generate the total economic impact. And then afterwards, we did a return on investment calculations with the type A costs and the impacts. And so I will show you the results for that now. So on the left, I have the type 1 multiplier results, the type 2, and then the total results, which is the sum of those two. I'll just go over the total results real quickly. So the total increase in value added was about $800,000, almost $850,000 in Albany County. The total wages that increased was $400,000, almost $450,000. $1 million increase in output, and there's an estimated 11 jobs created. I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I'll caveat. The value added parameter exists within output. So output kind of double counts that. So the value added is a better representation of like the increase in economic activity, and the output kind of double counts that. The output would just be the total contribution to GDP that this program has. So from our estimates, I'd say about a million, almost 1.5 million, was an increase GDP as a result of this program, and then about 11 jobs estimated to be created. So this is the return on investment table. So you have the type A cost on the left and the type B cost on the right, and that shows you the net economic impact. So the net economic impact is the economic impact minus the investment. So that $600,000 number would be the $800,000 number from before, subtracting $170,000 for the type A investment, and then so you'll see that there's a lot of negative numbers on the right-hand side, and I will get into that to a minute, but don't let that scare you quite yet. And so on the return on investment, you can see a kind of a vast difference. So on the left-hand side, the returns are quite high, and on the right-hand side, the returns are quite low and negative. So the reason why that is because the right-hand column, which is the type B investments with the economic impact, that's a representation of what a true dollar-to-dollar impact would be. Because remember, the type A investments was just our money, but the impact analysis was our money and the other grants that were used. So the money that actually flowed through the economy was much greater. And so if you measure that dollar going through the economy, it has low returns. But if you measure our dollar going through the economy, it's much higher because they pulled other money with our money, essentially. So if you look at a dollar, like the right-hand side, like $1 going through the economy. So that's not actually a contraction in the economy. That's not the economy shrinking. That's just saying the amount the economy expands is less than $1, essentially. So that's not like a really scary thing on the right-hand side. It's just saying there was still growth, but it's not more than $1 growth. But on our end, from our perspective as the city of Laramie, it is much greater than $1 growth. Oh, and I forgot to mention this, but the reason the type A is $170,000 and not $200,000 is there are some agencies that didn't participate in the study. So I have omitted them from the study. So it's kind of a subset of the agencies because they didn't provide information. So I didn't want to like guess how they spent that money. So I just lowered it to 170,000 because that's how much information we had. And then, and so to further discussion, so given those results, I would say that the Community Partner Grant Program is a positive investment for the city of Laramie. We have positive returns in terms of economic growth and jobs and wages. But this is only measuring a subset of the actual impact the Community Partners Program has. There's more to the Community Partners Program than just the economic impact. There's lots of really beneficial like social and community and just belonging that the Community Partner Program creates that this study did not measure, that we did not comment on. So the results in this presentation should only be a subset of the consideration of this program and should not be the full story of it. And then I'll also say that the results of this study should be taken conservatively because of the amount of assumptions that are made. And I go over this in the full report, but I would say that those assumptions deflate the actual impact. There's a lot of restrictions that don't allow the money to, they don't allow the results to get as big as they could, given the restrictions that this model has. But this model is a really good way to estimate accurate impact analysis. Those assumptions just have to be made, but take these results pretty conservatively. and very cautiously that these are just an estimate of what the impacts could be rather than what they exactly are. And then I think that's all I have for you, and I will gladly take any questions you have.
Thank you, Samuel. Councillor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Samuel. That's very, very informative, knowing how our grants to them are working. You kind of answered my question. I was going to ask you, how many agencies did you send questionnaires to, and how many responded?
So I looked at the 2024 community partners list because for fiscal year 2024, all that money was spent, and I didn't do 2025 because I'm assuming that all that money isn't exactly spent yet. So in 2024, if I remember correctly, I think there were about 31 community partners and 28 responded.
That's very good. Councillor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Samuel. This is great. Love the numbers and the data and the information. And I have two questions, and one of them is just to confirm. So in one of your last few slides, you said these are, excuse me, these numbers are conservative because we put in, you know, some estimations. And if we're estimating, we're creating like blocks, so we're not inflating things, right? And so that's, I just wanted to confirm that that's correct, that these numbers that we're seeing, these percentages could in fact be higher, but the way that we're evaluating them is to try to be conservative, so we're not artificially inflating them if we don't have certain information. Is that correct?
Mayor,
Yes.
and I apologize for not going through you on the last
That's
question.
okay.
Mayor to Councillor. So yeah, I'm so sorry. Can you repeat your first question again?
Yeah, no worries, man. Just curious, just confirming that these numbers and percentages we're seeing are conservative. And, you know, they could actually be higher, but because of different, you know, inputs or whatever, that we're not just going to we're not going to guess at certain variables. So we'll put whatever controls we need to make sure that we're getting real numbers. And if anything, that they're probably lower than what they really are.
Yeah. So these, so you're right. These results are definitely a lot more conservative what they could be, given the assumptions. I'll talk about one of the assumptions that kind of illustrates this. So one of them is no regional feedback. So if you're analyzing a project in Albany County and they needed to buy inputs from Natrona County to do that, well, that would be a leakage. But if the inputs in Natrona County needed to buy other things from Albany County, it wouldn't count that income to us, but that could potentially be a bigger impact. So because it doesn't count that, that would definitely be a lower impact result than what is demonstrated with the RIMS2 model. So not all of them, but I would say most of these assumptions do deflate the results a little bit. And if you're really curious, the RIMS2 on the BEA website, they have like this, they have a user guide that I used for this analysis that talks about all of the inner workings of how the multipliers work. So that you could find that on bea.gov/RIMS2 user guide or something similar to that. And then did you have a second question?
Yeah, Mayor, if I may ask a second question. Is that okay?
Follow up.
Thank you. And Samuel, I don't know if you've done more of these evaluations on the SBT or city manager, if you have, but just curious on the trend, if we've had an evaluation like this in the past few years, and if these trends look about the same in terms of the return for the community partnerships and
Mayor to Councillor. To my knowledge, I don't think there have been many other economic impact analysis that are doing studies in this way in which you're measuring like the change in economic parameters. Not to my knowledge. If I'm wrong about that, I'll ask Janine to comment on that, but not to my knowledge, no.
Mayor, I'll just add to that. No, yeah, Samuel is correct. This is the first full economic impact analysis that we've done using this modeling software. I will tell you, in years past, we've looked very generally to our community partner recipients, asked them, did you use our dollar to leverage any other dollar of grant revenue, such as using the city's funds as match? And many years ago, we would say, for instance, these select agencies were able to take $100,000 from the city and leverage $1 million in additional grants. So we do just a simple return on investment $1 leverage $2, right? But this is the first use of this more broad regional data for economic analysis division.
Yes.
Counselor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I thought I was second in line. You caught me off guard there a little bit. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Samuel. This is super compelling to see. I love that there is some like hard quantifiable data now that we can use to show that impact, knowing that there are so many factors that are qualitative, like you discussed, that go into these agencies, be they nonprofits working in social services, arts, education, recreation, et cetera, that have major impacts on people's lives. We know those to be true because we hear from those people, or maybe we work with those organizations. So I just think that's really cool. I do have just a quick question as to how, going back to your original list of factors that go into this analysis and the assumptions inherent that like leverage dollars from other granting organizations would also come from Albany County. Just knowing that I, work with organizations that use these as funds to leverage grants that do not come from Albany County, but maybe come from federal sources or other national sources. How does that change the analysis if we were to consider like a percentage of that overall like leveraged money coming from outside? Is that considered a leakage?
Mayor to Counselor. So that assumption that all of the other grant agencies exist in Albany County, that actually lowers the impact potential of this program, because if a grant agency exists outside of Albany County, and they give extra grants, that's money injected into our economy. Just like that's essentially just money just given to us on a silver platter that goes through our economy. And so it would be better if all of those extra grant agencies existed outside of Albany County. And the reason I made that assumption for this report was there wasn't enough time to actually implement that part into the report. So if I had done that, it would have taken longer, but it would have produced more accurate results. But yeah, that assumption deflates the impact value.
Okay, that's interesting. And apologies, Mayor, if I can just follow up really quickly.
Yes, follow up.
If so you're saying essentially that, given more time, and I'm not suggesting that we go back and do that. Thank you very much for the time you spent on this. It affirms what I know to be true about this program. But if we were to go back, had more time to work with partners, gather more data, and say like a percentage, like it's 65% of the money's leverage came from, the National Endowment for the Humanities, or like the Mellon and Ford Foundation, or other philanthropic organizations, that would actually increase the positive output results for us.
Mayor to Counselor. Yes. So yeah, if those grants existed not in Albany County, that would definitely increase the impact of this program, because they're just putting money into the economy, and that money gets spent in Albany County. Now, some of that money could be used for inputs that exist outside of Albany County, so not all of it would stay in the county. Like a lot of money has to be leaked just to for businesses to operate, because a lot of suppliers exist outside of the county. Obviously, like we live in a globalized economy where different regions produce different things, and we all trade with each other. And but if you just isolate Albany County, money is lost to be able to buy things from other counties. But for the most part, if those grant agencies were outside of the county, they are injecting money into our economy.
Thank you. Counselor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Lockhart kind of asked my question that I had at the beginning of this, but I'm wondering if I could follow up with a comment.
Yes.
Thank you. I think, first of all, Samuel, thank you so much. This is great. I hope you had fun doing the project. It sounds like you're really knowledgeable, and some of what you're saying is a little over my head even. So yes, good work. I think maybe my comment is, it sounds like 28 of the 31 agencies participated. I'm wondering if maybe in the future that in the application we could put a section that says our agency agrees to participate in an annual questionnaire about the funding. I think it'd be great if we could get everyone to participate. I know agencies have a lot going on and folks are busy, but I think that would give us even clearer data and only be helpful. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. Samuel, obviously this is impressive that we can have a multiplier that increases our contribution many times. I think you may be a little bit low on how much impact we really do have, because it's my understanding that because we provide funding to the airport, that makes them eligible for at least $1 million annually. And so that would inflate what you have. And also, in talking to the downtown clinic, the money that we provide for them makes it possible for them to go out and find hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical medicine and things like that. So we probably will never know how much real impact we have with this. And also, not that it's time to go out and find new people to participate, but I was just thinking some people we don't even touch are things like youth and adults sports, because if we could fund them to the point where they could attract tournaments to the city of Laramie, that also would bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars in economic impact. But we don't, for some reason, reach out to sports teams. We don't reach out to, groups. We do provide funding to United Way, which we don't to things like Kiwanis Club and Lions Club and Elks Club and things like that, where that money is sent out in various directions. But I think, what my point is this: I don't think we know the impact that we have by keeping these programs going and stable, because they make a huge impact, not only in multiplying funds available to our community, but also in the impact to individuals, for example, through interfaith, where they reach 10% of our population just because they have the funds to provide food and things to help that way.
Mayor to Councillor Shumway.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a good comment, and I agree with what I really agree with what you said. I'll say again that this analysis only measures the economic impact in terms of those 4 parameters that I talked about. I'll just say there is so much more that is not measured than it is measured with this. So the true economic impact analysis, no one will ever know, because there is no economic impact analysis that ever actually drills down to the final penny what the impact of any project is. So we did our best with what the tools we had available to us. But I will say one example that you kind of highlighted that this analysis does not capture is if interfaith helps all those people that interfaith helped now have the ability with that burden lifted off to them to contribute to the economy in their own ways by working or spending money. Anytime, Family Promise or interfaith, help somebody with their rent payment. That's more money that they have to themselves that they can actually contribute to our economy with, rather than it being eaten up by their rent. And obviously, like, paying your rent is important, and that also is contributing to the economy. But they could spend that at a restaurant or at the grocery store and contribute to the wages of all those other workers in our economy. So yeah, I'll just highlight that there's so much more in the economy that is not measured by this report that it's interesting to think about. But with the tools we have available, these are the numbers that I can provide you in these specific areas.
Thank you, Samuel. Councillor O'Doherty.
Oh, I just wanted to mention some of the probably not tangible this way, but people that are able to get jobs because they can use the computers at the library, and people that can get jobs because now they've taken care of their tooth issues, and I'm sure that's not enumerated, right? The agencies aren't saying 6 people got jobs elsewhere because of the help we gave them. That's not included in that, right?
Mayor, through to Councilman O'Doherty. So in the questionnaire that I provided, I did ask a question that, if I remember the exact wording was, how many jobs are supported with the community partner funding. So those reports are not in this report because I later determined that they're probably not accurate, or I don't have the evidence to support those numbers. But like you said, if people at the library, if the library was able to get a new computer with our funds and somebody was able to get a job with those computers, that would not be calculated in these numbers, because another huge assumption that I kind of went over is that these RIMS 2 multipliers are essentially a black box to us. We don't know. I don't know how the Bureau of Economic Analysis actually fine tunes their input output tables to produce these multipliers. We just have to trust that those multipliers are accurate. But so those jobs that I gave you are coming from the change in final demand, but I have no doubt that the actual number is much, much higher, because all of the things that they allow people in our community to do, if it weren't for the services that they provide, so like I said, rent assistance or food assistance, that helps people not just pay their rent or get a meal, but that lifts a burden off of people to be able to do things that they're not normally able to do if they're struggling with hunger or missing their rent, if that makes sense.
And I think about also, if we feed and house, lift that burden and free that person up for the future, then they find a job and they relieve themselves from the programs and continue. And if we treat medical conditions and stabilize somebody with a chronic illness, such as with the downtown clinic, then it allows them to work and to contribute, and it increases the quality of life. So it's you've really provided a perspective that gives us kind of a kernel of truth, where we can extrapolate how much this does impact our community, and the importance of relatively small amount of money, $230,000, how far that really goes in our community. I just appreciate the time that you put into this and your report. Councillor Shumway?
Thank you, Mayor. One thing I think that we need to all realize is the money that we contribute hardly ever will be reported back as supporting anyone's employment, because that's not what the city wants to take a look at. What it does is free up money that they have then to employ people, but they look at bricks and mortar, they look at projects, they look at different things, but they'll never report back to us that we hired a new secretary or something like that, because that's not what we're our goal is to give them opportunities to fund things that they normally could not fund. And by doing that, it frees up money for them to provide employment for people.
Any further questions or comments before I go to the public? Samuel, thank you. And now we'll go to the public. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, and back to council. Janine, did you have something for us?
Yes, Council, I just wanted to wrap up quickly and clarify a couple things. First of all, I wanted to thank Samuel. He worked very diligently on this project and has done fine work for the city and left us with hopefully data that will be useful to you and is timely, as you right now are considering maybe revamping the procedure that you use to take in these applications beginning in December, January, and then ultimately make funding decisions in the spring for next year's fiscal cycle. So thank you, Samuel. And Samuel and I both are going to be leaving Laramie and moving back to Casper, it turns out, next month. But we did purchase this modeling software in its current form with the most recent data and are leaving the opportunity for maybe future use of it by the city if the city would like. I was astounded to find out how really inexpensive the RIMS 2 modeling was. So that was great, or the subscription, I should say. So I wanted to leave you with that. And then to Councillor Shumway's question, I wanted to clarify one thing too. As we talked tonight about the Community Partner Grant Program, we are not talking about our fee-for-service partners like the airport and Laramie Main Street. And so those impacts would be in addition to what Samuel's presented to you this evening.
Thank you. Councilors, any final comments? Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you for your very deep and well thought out process and study for us. We kind of got to give a hand to our partners too. What they do with the money that we do give them. So that's a big shout out to them too, that they try to squeeze every useful penny out of every dollar to help people in our community. So thank you to them also.
Mayor, may I make a comment? I would just like to thank the City Council and all of you for asking questions and commenting on my research. And I'd like to thank City Manager Janine Jordan for giving me this opportunity to work here and do this research for you. I've learned a lot while doing this analysis for the city, and I very much appreciate it. So just thank you.
Thank you. And we appreciate you too. Thank you.
We're hoping Samuel can use this to go to grad school next Saturday. That's it. So Council, just introducing our next two work sessions, if you're ready, Mayor.
Yes, we are ready.
So we have Assistant Chief Ton Smith here with us tonight, and I think he will lead off the presentation, but I just wanted to remind you that Council had asked us to cover the noise ordinances that pertain to loud vehicles and those sorts of things. I wanted to just kick it off by saying, if you've lived in Laramie for any length of time, I think there are cycles, there are seasons of Laramie, right? I found on my chair in my desk in my office this last month like grocery bag that I think mosquito control left for me as a treat. And it's black and it has sparkle words printed on it with sparkle that says, I survived another Laramie mosquito season, right? So there's June when the mosquitoes come. And if you are for any length of time associated with the city or the city council, you get a lot of citizen complaints that time of year about mosquitoes. Well, in the fall, the cycle of the fall is we get a lot of complaints, as do I'm sure you all hear, about loud vehicles and increased traffic noise. And I think that is just a function, right, of students coming back to town. Maybe that part of our population has a disproportionately high number of loud vehicles compared to us old folks. But in any case, more traffic and more loud vehicles. So this was requested when the cycle ramped up this fall with students coming back to town. And our assistant chief will talk to you a little bit about how we enforce that and try to maintain some sense of tranquility and peace in our neighborhoods when we see our population increase.
Good evening, Assistant Chief.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. Thanks for having us and requesting this work session. So I put together a little presentation. We'll go through a few things here. Hopefully, what does that not go? Oh, there it goes. There we go. Hopefully I've kind of thought about what you might want to get out of this and the information. And so I put together some statistics over the last 3 years. All the statistics that we'll look at are from 2023, 2024, and then 2025 through September through the third quarter. And we just dropped it off right there just to make kind of a cutoff line. So we'll go over some of these, the ordinances that we use for noise enforcement. There's a couple of them that we use. Both of them were adopted in the early 80s, 1980 and 1981. So these have been on the books that we've been using for 45 years, these noise ordinances. We'll look at how noise is enforced, kind of the police department's strategy on how we enforce noise and some of the challenges that that come along with that. And then we'll end out looking at end the presentation with what some of the other cities, surrounding cities, are doing in and specifically look at the new ordinance that Cheyenne just adopted just last month about mufflers. And that was included in your packet. I included a lot of ordinances from a lot of different cities, just so that you would have a chance to kind of look at that and compare what they're doing and what we're doing. A lot of what you'll realize is those ordinances are written a lot the same, a lot of the same verbiage. But then we'll end it with this new one from Cheyenne, which we'll talk about, and how it's pretty much identical to the one that we're using right now. So to start with some statistics, just over the past few years, this is what we're looking at here. Is these are complaints for loud vehicles. So obviously every call that comes into our dispatch center, there's a record of that, right? And so that we can I get a hold of our records supervisor and say, give me a number of complaints that we've had each year, and she can go through and filter these out and give me these exact numbers. So in 2023, we had 30 complaints for loud vehicles. In 2024, we had 35. And this year through September, we had 20. Now, I also included in this slide the number of citations that we've written for loud vehicles. You can see there 6, 1, and 3 so far this year. And I would point out that those 6 did not likely come from one of those 30 complaints, right? We receive a complaint and somebody calls, provides information to dispatch. They input all the information, they send an officer, they drive several blocks or halfway across town to get there. 10 minutes have gone by and that vehicle's no longer there, right? So, but anyways, we'll get into some of the ordinances that we used for. I did want to point out before we move on to that next slide, though, that as part of preparing for this, I thought 30 complaints seemed low to me. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that's a lot of complaints, right? 30, 35, 20 complaints. That doesn't show us a gigantic problem. But take that into comparison of the number of vehicles that traverse our city streets every year. And so I started thinking about this, and I thought, how many vehicles drive across our city streets on an annual basis? So I get a hold of our city engineer, Eric Japp, and say, how many vehicles drive on our city streets? So he provides me with this information that I want to share with you. He was able to calculate the total estimated number of vehicle movements on city streets using the 2023 average annual daily traffic values that were provided by YDOT on a study in 2023 for the city. Based on the sum of all of those numbers across all the roadway segments, the estimated total annual vehicle volume is approximately 1.27 billion total vehicle traversals annually on our streets. So let me clarify that that's not 1.27 billion separate vehicles that drive on our streets, right? Right. So for instance, for me to get here tonight, I probably had 7 of those just driving from my house to here, right? Each roadway that I drive on is another one of those numbers, if that makes sense. So it's not 1.27 billion separate vehicles driving through our city every year, because holy cow, that would be atrocious, right? But that's a lot of vehicle movement in our city. Out of 1.27 billion vehicle traversals, to have 30 or 35 complaints about loud vehicles, it tells me that that's kind of a low. Now, do we hear vehicles and not call? Probably, right? Yeah. So not everybody who hears a vehicle and wants to complain about it calls and makes that complaint. But so these are the statistics that we have right now based on that. So I just thought that 1.27 billion number was, I did not expect that. I was thinking in the 20 million range, maybe, just in my mind, until the engineer figured this out. Yeah. So ordinances, what are the noise ordinances that we use for this? So there's two ordinances that we can use to enforce vehicle noise. The first one, the Chapter 8 noise ordinance, and then under our traffic code, the muffler ordinance, which is more commonly the one that we use. We'll go into both of these and look at these. You had, oh, what'd I do? Yep, that's right. Now, there's a lot of information in here, and hopefully you had a chance to read this prior. I don't want to read all of these slides verbatim because it gets very lengthy, but I want to point out a couple of things. In our Chapter 8 noise ordinance, this gets very technical. It talks a lot about, you can see in here, it talks a lot about that noise has to be measured from 25 feet. You have to use a specific sound level meter of standard design, using standards that were established by the American National Standards Institute. So this is not something where we could just jump on Amazon and buy a $30 sound meter and go outside and say, yep, you violated the sound, the noise ordinance. We have to have very specific instruments that are calibrated and certified. Officers have to be certified to operate them. And all of the purpose of that is we have to be able to come into court and say that this is an accurate sound measurement based on this certification, right? And so there's a lot of, people will call us sometime to say, I've recorded it on my phone. I downloaded a decibel meter on my phone. Those aren't viable for us to use in court. And so the noise ordinance, Chapter 8 noise ordinance, is very hard for us to use because there are so many things about it that we have to take into account. The distances, it's specifically written in our ordinance that the wind cannot be blowing more than 5 miles per hour. Well, we could have started the discussion with that, right? And then just said, well, I guess we're never going to be able to use a sound meter here because outside of maybe an hour ago, the wind wasn't blowing, but yesterday it was. So most times the wind in Laramie blows more than 5 miles per hour, right? And so it makes it very difficult for us to use this ordinance and a specific device to measure sound. They're very inconsistent and inaccurate. If you measure a sound of a vehicle from 20 feet away versus 40 feet away, the measurement on the device is going to be different. And so how do you make that consistent from officer to officer, from incident to incident, to make sure that every single vehicle you measure is measured under the same criteria, exactly 25 feet away, when the wind's not blowing 5 miles per hour, there's no other noise contributing to that vehicle, which that's, again, hard to find also. So this one is very difficult for us to use, so we don't use it very often. The ordinance goes into, the levels, the decibel levels for each thing that are established. Again, this is all American National Standards Institute stuff. We don't make these numbers up. These would be the same wherever you go. Here's another challenge. For 15 minutes in any 1 hour time period, that decibel level can increase by 10. And so if we show up and we did have a decibel meter and we say, oh, you're 5 over, well, are you within your 15-minute right to the permissible increase? This is very impossible for us to enforce this and then come into court on a citation and defend this, right? It's very, so this one's very, very difficult for us to deal with. Well, let's add another challenge in here. If your vehicle weighs less than 10,000 pounds, it's 80 decibels. But if it's over 10,000 pounds, you can go up to 88 decibels. Unless it's that 15 minutes of any hour, now it can go up to 98, right? And so it's just, it makes it very hard for us to decipher this and determine. So thankfully, we have this one. This is the one that we use more commonly, right? Under our traffic code, under mufflers, 1016-510. And that chart a minute ago, all of those citations on there that were written under the noise ordinance were written under this muffler ordinance, not the Chapter 8 noise ordinance. We only had one citation in the last 3 years written under the noise ordinance, and it wasn't for a vehicle. It was for a stereo at a house. So this is the more common one that we use. Every motor vehicle shall at all times be equipped with a muffler in good working order and in constant operation to prevent excessive or unusual noise and annoying smoke. And no person shall use a muffler, cutout, bypass, or similar device upon a motor vehicle on a highway. So this section A right here is the one that we would use if we were to write a citation for somebody's muffler being too loud or their vehicle being too loud. The standard here is that an officer has to observe the noise and say that it is excessive or unusual, unusually loud or excessive. So if I'm standing on the side of the street and a car drives by and I go, wow, that is really loud. That is all I need to be able to write this citation. Under the other ordinance, I'd have to have a sound meter, make sure the wind's not blowing more than 5 miles per hour and all of those other things that we talked about, right? So this one is very much a more workable tool for us to use. And then, of course, section B, the engine and power mechanism of every motor vehicle shall be so equipped and adjusted as to prevent the escape of excessive fumes or smoke. This is the one that we then use for your coal rollers and the ones that blow the black diesel smoke as they're driving down the road. So that's the one that subsection is what that citation would be written under.
Councillor O'Doherty has a question.
Assistant Chief, I was wondering, on a highway, does that mean only the state highways?
So in any of our, sorry, through you, Honorable Mayor, in any of our statutes, ordinances, anything that talk about a highway is anything designated for vehicular travel. So highway defined in the statute would include our city roads, any roadway designed for vehicle travel. Yeah.
Councillor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. This will probably be covered, but I just wanted to bring it up now in case it's not. I see signs that say no jake brakes. Do we have an ordinance in the city of Laramie to where they can be cited for using jake brakes as they come into town?
So through you, Honorable Mayor, using that terminology, no, but it would be under this section, right? Using because it's excessively loud, right? So that's the one that we would use. There may be, and I didn't research state statutes specifically for that. There might be a separate one for state statutes that disallow that. But for the most part, those are enforced or enacted for city to city. Some cities allow it, some cities don't, coming into town, where the semi trucks come in and they hit that engine brake and it ramps up the RPMs and it starts to slow the truck down instead of them using and burning out their brakes. So an engine brake or a jake brake is not allowed, but it would be enforced by us under this ordinance, under section A.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Those are the two ordinances that we have to work with, right? We primarily use that second one that we talked about. So how is vehicle noise enforced? Obviously, it's not just enforced using the noise or the muffler ordinance, right? We would never be able to control it just using those two ordinances. So all of these ordinances, sound, vehicle noise, vehicle travel, is done through all traffic enforcement. So if we look at all traffic stop numbers, right? They're pretty consistent. And I think this year we're going to get pretty close through the third quarter. We were at 4,300. So we got a couple thousand more to go to meet these last two. The last 2 years, that average is, I mean, they're just within a few numbers apart. That's pretty consistent year to year for us. Traffic enforcement has always been a big component of what we ask our officers to do on a daily basis. And calming traffic is the point of all traffic enforcement. And if we can calm traffic down, we believe that we can lower the sound of vehicles, right? What makes a vehicle loud? When you step on the gas or punch the accelerator all the way to the floor and it ramps the RPMs up, your vehicle gets very loud. The faster vehicles drive, the louder they are. So if we can control traffic through traffic enforcement in general, we can reduce the sound of vehicles is our goal on that. Obviously, we're never going to stop loud vehicles just through enforcing the muffler ordinance, just like we would never stop people completely from speeding by enforcing the speeding ordinance, right? But we try. What's the first thing that you do? Everybody's answer is going to be the exact same thing, and you don't have to tell me, but everybody does this. I do this after being a cop for over 20 years. I'm driving down the street and I see red and blue lights up ahead, and a cop has a car pulled over on a traffic stop. Without even thinking about it, instinctively, my foot comes off the accelerator. My other hand comes up to the steering wheel, and I start looking around and paying better attention, right? So that's why we enforce traffic so much. It calms traffic down. It slows traffic behavior down. So this graph is showing total number of traffic stops. The dark orange are warnings. The brown, the lower number there, are the citations that we've written over the course of those 3 years. So then let's look at the citations. So in these 2023, you can't hardly see the dark brown line on the top of this one, but that is indicating exhibition of speed. Exhibition of speed or speed acceleration contest is another ordinance that we have that we try to enforce. And so you can see over the years, the last few years, 13, 7, and 11, and then speeding citations. Pretty high number compared to all the other citations combined then. So like I said before, the purpose, if we can slow vehicles down, we can reduce the sound of vehicles, right? 13 exhibition of speed citations, the majority of those come from somebody sitting at a red light and the light turns green and they ram their foot on the accelerator and take off as fast as they can. Squealing tires, taking corners too fast, things like that fall into our exhibition of speed or speed acceleration contest ordinance. And then obviously slowing down traffic through speed enforcement is our goal with all of that. Whoops, I don't know what I hit. We're not done quite yet, sorry. What are some other cities doing? So I included some other ordinances in your packet with you. You know, from the two Laramie ordinances that we went over. Oh, thanks. And sorry. Love Laramie. It turns cold and dry. It's great. So I included ordinances from Laramie that we went over. Only I included the complete ordinance package. Some of Cheyenne ordinances to include the brand new one that they just put into place last month. Casper, Jackson, and Rock Springs. I just looked at some surrounding communities to see what they were doing, right? And compared their ordinances to ours. Some of them you would see have similar ordinances that talk about noise, decibel levels, and all of that. And they don't really use those for enforcement either because of the same challenges that we face. There's no real good way to do that. So what I really want to talk about, though, is this is the new ordinance that Cheyenne City Council just put into place. It went through 3 readings, the public comment, all of that. They approved it either at the end of September, I think, and then it went into effect in October. So what I want to point out here is that if you read section A and section B, this is exactly what our muffler ordinance says. It's almost verbatim exactly what ours says. We've had that ordinance on the book for 45 years, and that's the one that we've been using. Cheyenne, when they went to research this and start this process of putting this new ordinance in place, they reached out to several places to find out what they're doing, just like everybody would. They adopted this mostly from Fort Collins, Colorado. So Fort Collins is doing this exact same thing, just recently started this also. So I think that the ordinance that we have on the book for the muffler ordinance and the way that we enforce that is our most valuable tool that we have to do this. And Cheyenne just now coming up with this and putting this in place, identical for those first 2 points. To what ours is, tells me that for 45 years we've been doing it the right way. That now this is what everybody else is going to use to enforce vehicle noise. Section C there, this one is not in our ordinance, but no person shall continue, make, or cause any unreasonable noise or originating in or from any vehicle. In addition, no person shall knowingly allow any vehicle they own, operate, or control to produce unreasonable noise or operate any vehicle regardless of ownership in a manner or with equipment that produces unreasonable noise. So it just kind of clarifies, to me, that kind of clarifies or further expands on muffler or altering your muffler or altering your vehicle to sound louder on purpose. And that's what they're talking about there. But really, I just want you to realize that the muffler ordinance that we have is now the one that Cheyenne is just going to. Now, this one is not, this subsection D of their ordinance is not in ours either, which if that's something that you want to look at and think, hey, this would be something that we could add, I could get with City Attorney Southards and we could talk about what that would look like. He and I had conversations about this prior to this meeting tonight, and he also spoke with the city attorney in Cheyenne about their new ordinance, which is where we got this information from. Any peace officer enforcing this section is empowered to make a prima facie determination as to whether a noise is unreasonable. So that's what we do now. Officers have that authority already to make that determination. Our ordinance just doesn't spell that out and say that, but neither does any of the other laws that we enforce, right? All the laws we enforce, we have the authority to enforce, and they don't say, have a specific section allowing that. But basically what this is doing is giving officers in Cheyenne discretion, time of day that the noise occurs. Is it as acceptable if the same vehicle makes the exact same noise at 2 o'clock in the afternoon versus 2 o'clock in the morning? So time of day, the location where it's being operated, the presence of people, and the operation of a motor vehicle in a manner that causes unreasonable noise, including but not limited to unnecessary or rapid acceleration. So we have a completely separate ordinance that we use for that. Our acceleration or speed contest ordinance that we use that covers that. But I mean, if this was something that you wanted to look at and have us add some more verbiage to ours, but to be honest, I feel like for 45 years this ordinance has served us well, and we use overall traffic enforcement to calm vehicle behavior in town. And that's where we're getting compliance in noise, is through overall traffic enforcement, not just through muffler enforcement. But I think our muffler ordinance is fine as it stands, and it's a good working tool for us to use that we that we do use. I think that's all that I had for that. And with that, I would take any questions that you have.
Counselors, any questions or comments? Counselor O'Doherty?
Yeah, I can. So I'm one of the people that asked for this session because I've heard several people complain to me, but they don't complain. I mean, I wouldn't want to call dispatch and say this thing that happened 10 minutes ago to me. Write it down, have another record. But the people that have complained to me about it, in fact, I'm sure you've heard from one of them who was an attorney. She was like, you could just have an app on your phone, a decibel meter. But now I see why that is not an option. And so that's good to know. And I just want to offer my my electric bolt as an undercover because people feel the need to express their extra smoke and noise in front of me. It seems like more now that I have an electric vehicle than when I had my little Saturn, which they still did it to me a lot, but probably my bumper stickers. So anyway, I'm just offering if you need an undercover vehicle, it accelerates very fast. Thanks.
Further questions or comments? Counselor Shumway.
Well, I'll make a comment. I think we should enforce this ordinance for excessive noise. If a CSU fan, after winning the game, honks the horn excessively as they leave town.
Counselor Freed.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Assistant Chief. I guess my one question, and I really appreciate all the info, and I think it sounds like our ordinances are doing some good work and officers have a good understanding of how to enforce it. And my only question for you would be if someone is, concerned about noise in their area and maybe they hear cars coming by, whatever, what's your recommendation? Is it still to call and say, we have to file that and maybe we'll catch them, and the more data we get, then the more we can act on it? Is that kind of the thought process that you'd recommend?
Yeah, through you, Honorable Mayor. Yeah, absolutely. We still encourage people to call us. There's lots of things that we can do. We can put extra patrols in place. We get multiple complaints in a neighborhood or a specific part of town. It's easier for us to then, that officer that's taking that complaint puts out a message to the rest of the team. Hey, this is going on in this area. Let's increase our patrol in this area, do some extra enforcement in that area. And so that we can do that. Outside of people calling us and telling us, we're not going to know unless we're in that spot at that exact moment, which people just don't do that in front of police cars. It seems like. So they seem to behave a little bit more when they see one of our cars around. Yeah.
Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Assistant Chief. Not a whole lot of complaints, so I don't know if you can even answer this question, but with 30 complaints, is there a certain area of town you see more of it than others, or is it just
through you, Honorable Mayor? Not really. It's not something that's consistently in this spot and not in this spot. Obviously, where we saw a few of them this year were, the 500 block of Grand Avenue on Friday afternoons when people were standing in the courthouse lawn, right? And so, that's a anti-demonstrator, standing up to them or whatever they're doing. And so that's where a lot of those came from. So it's events like that. But a lot of times it's everywhere in town. It's not in any one specific spot, really.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. I was, as you started with this presentation, I think both Councilor Lockhart and I looked at each other thinking like, why in the world do we even have this ordinance? But it was great to hear that it can be used rarely, perhaps in other circumstances like the music thing that you noted. But in thinking about this and thinking about how that ordinance is so difficult, it sounds like leave that because the other one works just fine. But is there any opportunity, are any of these devices getting better so that you actually could do that? Is it worth investing in if they are, or do you just keep going with the ordinance that works?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So obviously, as technology gets better, these devices get better and more expensive. So I did a lot of research on these specific devices, right? You can look on Amazon, you can find one for $30. You can find them up to $700. These scientific technical instruments that we would be required to use based on the American National Standards Institute's standards of what we would have to use are anywhere between $2,000 and $6,000 a piece. And so in order for us to effectively use that for noise enforcement, if we didn't have the muffler ordinance on the books, we would have to put one of these devices in every one of our officers' hands, right? And so I mean, I threw some of this together, 47 officers, and being conservative and saying it was $2,000 a piece. That's $94,000 in equipment. Not only just in the equipment, but then we have to train every single officer, and it's a required 24-hour certification training course that every officer would have to go through. And the average price of a law enforcement certification course for a 3-day course is anywhere from $500 to $1,000. For 47 officers is another potentially $47,000 to train our staff to use the device. So it would be a very cost prohibitive project for a startup cost, right? Now, I did some research looking into finding a device that meets the standards that ANSI requires, and the one that I found was $4,873. So for 47 of those, that's $229,000 in equipment costs that we would need to have to do that, right? Now, do we have to put that in all of our officers? So I even did some conservative numbers with it and say we just give those to our patrol officers. We're still over $100,000 into this to get 30 of these, and to have 1 or 2 of them defeats the purpose, right? Oh, I heard the sound. I got to go get the sound meter and come back. And either you have to be standing there with the sound meter on in the exact location while the vehicle is making the noise from exactly 25 feet away while the wind's not blowing 5 miles per hour. So there's a lot of challenges to that. And it makes it very, very difficult. Could we use them to enforce the noise ordinance for something outside of vehicles? Probably. But things like then noise complaints that come up for us outside of vehicles would be like loud party stuff. And that doesn't fall under the decibel level noise thing anyways. It's more of a people being loud. So it then becomes more of a disorderly conduct ordinance or a breach of peace type of a situation. And so we just don't have there's so many restrictions, and our hands are tied with so many of the things that the American National Standards Institute requires to measure the sound. And all of that has to be exactly the same every single time for us to then be confident and come into court and say, this guy and this guy had that we measured their sound in the exact same manner. So that would be very, very hard for us to do. So
follow up, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So now that you're talking about that too, and thinking about the 5 mile an hour thing, that ordinance is pretty worthless because you use a different ordinance for the noise thing.
Through you,
right?
Through you, Mayor. I don't want to say that it's worthless, but we don't use it as often just because of these things. But there's other parts in Article 1 of Chapter 8 of the noise ordinance where there's also some verbiage in there where it doesn't have to be a sound meter, right? If sound from an electronic voice is heard through a shared wall, like for an instance in an apartment complex, and you can hear your neighbor's stereo through your wall, that's a violation, and we can write a citation on that ordinance based on that. So, so I wouldn't say that it's completely. It's just really tough to have a sound meter did I take that sound reading at 24 feet or at 26 feet? Now I'm outside of the bound, I'm out of bounds, right? And so unless we actually measure that and then had a device to measure what is the wind blowing, because I have to come into court now to defend that citation. And it's specifically written in that ordinance that the wind cannot exceed 5 miles per hour. That with it being written in there, I now have to prove that the wind was not blowing. I can't just say the wind was low and I think it was less than 5 miles per hour. That gets thrown out and it's not prosecutable in that way unless I can absolutely prove that the wind was blowing less than 5 miles per hour. So it creates a lot of challenges for us, but there's room for it to be there. It's been on our books for 45 years, written exactly as it is, and a lot of the other cities in our region have the similar ordinances. I'm just thankful that we have a muffler ordinance and another easier tool for our officers to use. Yeah.
Councillor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, if we were going to spend $250,000 or $250,000, you guys have bigger fish to fry than 30 noise complaints a year on that. You guys do a great job. So I'm sure many of them are warranted, you know, but still it's like, well, we can invest money that has a lot better useful to it. So
I have had occasion, I'm thinking about the ordinance that is not really so useful for traffic and cars. When the university was doing some major construction, we had neighborhood complaints, many, to various council members, and I went with some previous council members and walked the area where that's what we needed to do, was to measure the decibels and to think about sound mitigation in those types of situations. So I'm curious, do you even have one device?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. We do not currently even have a single device for this. And I recall the construction, they had large generators out there that just ran constantly. And I remember receiving some of these complaints.
Oh, it was driving people crazy.
It surely did. And, you know, when that's basically in your front yard for months at a time, that would be very hard to deal with. And I think they were trying to work with the university and the university with us, and we were all trying to work together to mitigate it. But at the same time, the construction noise is part of the construction. And so trying to navigate that and with our partners and being good neighbors and them reciprocating that, but I don't disagree that at this point, in that instance, we could have come out there with a sound meter and found a non-windy time and you tried to use it and determine what that actual level was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I think Councillor Shumway.
I heard there's an easy way to determine when the wind drops below 5 miles an hour. As soon as it does, people in Laramie fall down. That's how you know.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. Councillor O'Doherty.
Recalling the incident that you were just describing, Mayor, I recall there was also somebody that was running at a data center, like he was crypto mining in the basement, and it was a lot of noise. Now that is something, it seems like, don't most people knock it off if you go say you're really loud? My phone shows that you're way over, you know, do I have to come back with the special machine or will you just knock it off? Don't most people knock it off?
Through you, Honorable Mayor, I agree with that. That is an accurate statement. So people call us, we respond to those noise complaints, have a conversation with the person producing the noise, and usually that's enough to do. Going back to my example where we had the one citation in the past 3 years with that under that Chapter 8 noise ordinance, it was a loud stereo. That was us multiple trips coming back, several warnings, conversations, not getting compliance that resulted then in a citation for that. But generally, most people, one conversation is all that it takes. So again, we encourage citizens to call us and we go respond, we have a conversation, and that usually fixes the problem. or at least calms it down. Yeah.
Further comments or questions? I see none. So we'll go to, is there any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, we do have one. Chris.
Christopher Stratton, Laramie 24/7, on the aspects of consistent and horrid noise in this town. One can take a 5-minute trip to the strip during the evening, and there's nothing being done about it. We don't have any control of this. It's annoying. I live right next to the Tecker dorms. Starting at 6 o'clock in the morning, we have not the Tecker dorms that are actually Tecker dorms. It's near McHugh Street, etc., where they are renting out the apartments. On 6th and over, they start their engines on a consistent basis in the morning, and all that you're hearing is revving, revving, revving. It would be lovely if we had an officer actually set in those areas and enforce the law that we have for the mufflers, but we do not have it. And the other big problem to it is you call, they're gone. They don't have a capability of, there needs to be mitigation on it. There needs to be actual enforcement of those types of situations. If you look on Facebook, etc., you'll see the amount of complaints, etc., that everybody has about consistent muffler noise. And it would be lovely if we could go with what Cheyenne has brought in or more. Thank you.
And maybe, are you to the assistant chief indicated to call if they are not aware of the times, and they may not be able to arrive on time, but if they know that the time period is between such and such.
Many people are calling in.
Okay.
And there is nothing being done about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will go on to our third work session with Lieutenant Hutchinson. Good evening, Lieutenant.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me. So tonight, I prepared a presentation kind of on our 2-hour downtown parking and just kind of what that's looked like for us over the last 3 years, some of the struggles that we've had as a department, some of the things that we've done a little bit different. So we'll get into that. So overtime parking, the 2-hour parking downtown. There it is. It's under our parking ordinance, or 1036-110. It goes Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Affects the business access that we have and traffic flow patterns downtown. It's to assist with that parking availability for those downtown businesses. This is a map that I borrowed from the Laramie Downtown Alliance. Everything that you see in orange there, those indicate the 2-hour parking areas that we have downtown. Some of those parking areas have changed with our recent construction with the 3rd Street. And so the number of parking areas that we have downtown, some of those are approximate spaces. But then you also see the blue kind of bigger lots downtown. Those are 24-hour parking lots downtown. So in 2006, there was a study between 1st and 6th Street, and between Sheridan and Clark Street, there's 1,767 on-street parking spots and 1,945 off-street parking spots. Just to condense this down, that 2-hour limited time parking ordinance has a very specific boundary that it outlines in the ordinance. And so right now, there's about 459 2-hour parking spots in our downtown area. And in some of those lots, I excluded the lot on 4th Street out of these numbers, but 224 24-hour parking spots in some of those surface lots that we have downtown, just to give you an idea of what the parking availability we have down there is. So our enforcement of that, largely historically, it's been complaint based. And so a business owner will call us, we'll send one of our community service officers down there to mark the vehicle tires, and then they got to wait the 2 hours to come back and then enforce that. With it being complaint-based, it wasn't a proactive approach that we were taking initially with that parking enforcement. In talking with the downtown businesses and receiving some of their concerns, they wanted more consistency in what that enforcement looked like so that they had more access to their businesses downtown. And so some of the staffing with our community service officers has been a little bit more consistent, especially over the last 18 months. We're actually in the process of bringing on a third community service officer to also assist with those community service officer calls and also parking enforcement. And so we looked at some technology that maybe we could use to help with that those complaints that we were getting. Right now, the technology is a little cost prohibitive. The infrastructure that we have downtown is just not feasible for what we have right now. And so adding that third community service officer was the route we went. So we also went with directed patrols. We have two main parking concerns in Laramie, and that's the residential parking areas around the University of Wyoming, which we receive a lot of complaints from, and downtown parking. And so currently with our two community service officers that we have in the patrol division, one of them is assigned the residential parking area of proactively patrolling that, and the other is assigned the downtown parking area to proactively patrol that on the days that they work. And so in the past, and you kind of see this with a little bit of the numbers, and the numbers I've pulled are from 23, 24, and in the current stats for 25. I think up until about 2 weeks ago, I pulled the current numbers for that. So the marking and returning, we were having some issues. Officers the CSOs would come down and mark, and then they get tied up on priority calls, whether those are accidents, vandalism, stuff like that, where someone's calling in. And by the time that they were returning, those vehicles had already left. Most times it was over that 2 hour mark. We're looking more into 3, 4, 5 hours before they were actually able to come back and issue those citations. So the enforcement over, in 23, we had 107 2-hour overtime parking citations. In 2024, you can see where that staffing starts to get a little bit more consistent. We doubled that number to 274, and then the implementation of the staffing being consistent and the directed patrols that we're doing with our two community service officers to date, we're at 477 2-hour parking citations downtown. One of the adjustments that you guys did as council last year was the fee adjustments, raising that from a $10 fine to a $40 fine, and then also adding a second citation and third and subsequent citations, altering the fines for that. And that's been something that's been tremendous for us in getting compliance. We don't have as many repeat offenders, so you'll see that here. This is just for a 1 month period downtown. I'll put the dates up at top. We had 171 2-hour parking citations and then those vehicles receiving a second citation was 23. And of those 23, 7 of those vehicles have received 3 or more citations. So there is a dramatic effect in those people that are receiving multiple citations for that same violation. And so that's just kind of a brief overview of what our enforcement has looked like, some of the changes, and that might be why part of why this has come to your guys' attention. I did talk to some downtown business owners who are appreciative of the increased enforcement, as well as the Downtown Business Alliance, and just kind of in their view on it, representing some of those downtown businesses. As a police department, we don't really have a stance of, what's appropriate. We'll leave that to you guys as council. We'll enforce the ordinances as given to the best of our ability. So anybody have any questions?
Councilors, questions? Councilor Lockhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lieutenant. I appreciate it. I don't agree with any of it. Can I do a comment? Because I don't have a question.
We can do questions and comments.
So we business owners want people to come to their businesses, right? So what we're telling you is we only want your money for 2 hours. Then you have to leave. And if it's a cruddy weather day, people aren't going to go to 24-hour parking. Summertime, that's different. I understand. But my wife was downtown the other day. We all are aware that she's had some knee issues. She can't walk long distances, so she doesn't go to the 24-hour parking. It took her almost 3 hours to get her nails done. What if we wanted to go to lunch too, and I meet with her, and she gets a $40 ticket? I disagree with that. I think what we have is a problem with business owners and their employees and the tenants parking downtown, and they should park in the 24 hours. Then I don't think we have a parking issue downtown. I'm not, if I had a business downtown, I wouldn't park in front of my business. I wouldn't let my employees park in front of our business or any business. Also, let's make some money. And if someone wants to go 4 hours, how about we have a parking meter and you pay for 4 hours or 5 hours? I think it discourages people, because I tell you, if I got a ticket, you're rarely going to see me downtown. So this is just my opinion, but I think there's other solutions versus limiting when you can, how much time you can spend downtown. I mean, I could go on and on about this, but this gets me fired up. My wife heard my little rhetoric yesterday about it. So, and I'm like, oh, just stop, you know? So I think there's other ways we can come to make sure that our businesses downtown have customers. But like, you know, and I have many friends that have businesses downtown, but if you have 8 employees and they're all parking in front of businesses, they're taking up people that have money to come in and spend, is what they're doing. Those people should be parking at 24 hours. So that's my 2 cents. But I appreciate the work that's being done, because that's the way the ordinance is written now. So you're doing what you're supposed to do, and I appreciate that. But I think there's a better solution. Thank you.
Councilor Doherty.
Councilor Lockhart, it was the downtown businesses that were saying it's the other businesses that their employees are parking there. And it is even some salon owners and their employees parking there. And so they haven't been able cajole, you know, doing what you can, trying to cajole their neighbors, trying to be nice about it. Excuse, order, please. And so this was a desperate attempt, because we had so many complaints of downtown businesses, but we could consider lengthening the time. Boy, I feel very disrespected right now. I will stop talking.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, thank you, first of all. This is, I appreciate the information. And a couple of things that came to mind as Councilor Lockhart was bringing up his points. I think, one, it was noted that the businesses were upset because the employees were down there. That was a part of it. And to Councilor Doherty's point, they tried to talk and it wasn't working. And so they did come to us and say, what can we do? There also was at some point, I believe there's been discussion about meters downtown. And I think that has had mixed feelings from business owners too, because they're worried people won't come down if they have to pay for meters. However, I think I remember you, Assistant City Manager Fieser, talking about piloting, am I making this up? Piloting some meters maybe on a section of downtown that maybe there could be a little best of both worlds kind of thing. If you could remind me what your thoughts were on that, that would be great.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Vice Mayor Richardson. We did actually look into and put out an RFP for parking solutions. Unfortunately, none of them really rendered what we consider to be viable solutions for what we're working on. A lot of them worked off cameras that were placed all over the place, and how do you provide the I mean, it was just really a difficult AI situation. I will tell you that, you know, in the 10 years I've been here, I've heard all the discussion around parking and what the solutions are. And, you know, even so much as I've heard people like complain that somebody got a ticket, and then a few years later heard that same individual complain that they weren't ticketing. You know, we've heard it from all different angles. I think it's really going to be behoovant on this body and this organization to decide what parking enforcement will really look like for this community in the future, because it's a difficult process to handle. I would love it if I believed that AI technology was going to handle most of it, but I just don't think it does. And there's always going to be differences on the amount of time and parking. What should be enforced? What shouldn't be enforced? How do you do that? A lot of the difficulty is the employees change so much in the downtown. So if you're looking at like an employee parking pass, how you manage a system like that, you know, under the current constraints. So it really is a nebulous discussion. I agree with Councillor Lockhart that the police department is enforcing the ordinance as written. The judges out there, whether it's right, you know, we've also worked hard. I feel like I'm just spinning here, but we worked hard on First Street parking improvements. And quite frankly, the businesses didn't come down and say that they wanted to see more parking along First Street. And more, what we heard is from the residents is they don't want to impact the trees to add the parking that would add the spaces, you know. And so we've heard that, but the resounding support wasn't for the businesses. It was from the residents to not do the parking improvements. It's just an interesting conundrum of how you get the information and how you provide the satisfaction in the community for what they're looking for. I do believe that there probably are solutions that if we have the time and the efforts to tackle this, that we could really make some changes, make some decisions for this community that are really beneficial. But at this time, we haven't got to the point where there's even a trial ready to be set up. Sorry for that roundabout.
Further question or comments? Councillor Freed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lieutenant Hutchinson, for the presentation. And, you know, from my conversations with folks downtown and some of the public comment that we've received, I think it's been the patrols are being noticed, you know, and I think that's having an effect to get cars in and out and business owners to have more turnover. And so the most of the comments that I've heard in the last 8-9 months being on council have been really positive about the enforcement that's happening and getting vehicles moved around. So people are seeing it, and I think they're appreciative of it. But again, the whole idea of parking in our small confined area and bringing people here, and how do we don't have enough handicap spaces. We don't have enough spots for people to access. And so it's part of this huge, larger issue that I know the city's looking at as we talk about our master plan. And, you know, I think Traffic Safety Commission is looking at how we can have parking and different solutions and how we can use loading and unloading zones. And so I think this is a fluid conversation that people have been working a long time on. And I mean, now it's up to us too to hopefully find better solutions. But I think at least for this presentation and what you guys are doing, it's people are liking it and appreciative of it. So thank you.
Thank you. I did receive 2 texts, a phone call, and 2 emails from downtown businesses, merchants, appreciating. They saw what was coming up, that we were going to be talking about this, and they wanted to express their support, that it had made a difference. So I think we can continue to talk about alternatives, possibly some of the technology that and other things we can consider that, and as that comes down, but it's been a tough issue. So any further comment or questions? Thank you very much. And we'll go to public comment. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay. Seeing none, councilors, any updates? And if the counselors online can get ready, I'll start down here first. Councillor Freed?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm just looking back here at my notes. On November 12th, the Parks, Streets and Rec Board met at the same time that we met on Wednesday, and so at our work session. So I was unable to attend that, but we will be, I think, advertising for 3 board member vacancies, or 2, maybe 3. And so I think our chair is leaving the Parks, Trees and Rec Board, and there might be some vacancies coming up. So if folks know anyone who'd like to serve on the Park, Trees and Rec Board, that would be great. But I know that will be coming out from the Parks and Rec Department soon. And then on Thursday, the 13th, I attended the Ranch Advisory Commission's meeting, and really we're talking about having a meeting in January to talk about some of the things that are happening, but just really positive. We got a report from city staff about some of the haying operations and some of the studies in the downland ditch that's hopefully going to be completed soon, and I'm sure we'll get some updates from the city when that's done and maybe get to go out there and look at it, but that will be a really big piece for that water mitigation on the ranch and our infrastructure. And I also attended the Traffic Safety Commission on the same day, Thursday, November 13th, and some really good discussion about downtown potential parking, trying to pilot something with the city engineering staff to have some loading and unloading zones where downtown businesses who are loading things in, not these big box trucks that are coming and parking in between the lanes, but more so for, residents that are carrying groceries in and out. And so to not take up a 2-hour parking space, but be able to have access that way. So that was a big part of our traffic safety discussion. And those are my updates.
Thank you. Councillor Lockhart.
No updates,
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Just a quick update on the beautification committee. They are continuing and moving forward with the lights, and Tough Guys is going to be doing the lights on 3rd Street for those businesses, which should be happening. I think they said, let me go back to my notes here real quick. They are hoping to get that done, I think maybe by next week, if I'm remembering correctly. And then just another plug for this weekend is Small Business Saturday, and I think it's Plaid Friday. And then the Washington Park tree lighting is also Saturday. So.
Thank you. Let's see, Councillor Bowling, the Vice Mayor, Nancy Oakland Potter, and I met with Bailey Quick about the community partners application process. We together did some refinements on that, and Bailey Quick has just recently sent that to us yesterday to review, but I think it's going to be a much more streamlined application process. And it was good working together. It has gone before the commission. They've provided input, and so we've worked on that together. Councillor O'Doherty.
The mayor and Councillor Shumway and I were at the National League of Cities meeting in Salt Lake City, and we have about 1,000 things to report. But one thing I thought was especially interesting for Laramie was one of the recycling sessions. We learned that 88% of people believe that recycling is important to protect the future. But a lot of people do it wrong, and they were trying to explain that it's not so much that some things, yes, are recyclable, but they're not compatible with the system we have for collection and sorting. And they pointed out one thing that happens a lot this time of year, or in a month or so, is people put Christmas lights in their recycling. So maybe we need to do some announcements, public service announcements because that really can jam up the hoppers and everything. And the other thing I learned about was regarding recycling is there's a program in Denver called Spring Back, where they do mattress recycling, and it's a nonprofit, and they use formerly incarcerated people, take mattresses completely apart and recycle them. And since we have a lot of mattress turnover in Laramie, I was thinking maybe that's something we could look into. We learned a lot about data centers that I think might affect how we can protect our water and maybe our neighborhoods. And then we also had a lot of talk was about civility and dignified disagreements. So I would like to share this with fellow councilors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shumway.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the comment that Councilor Doherty said. There's 1,000 things that we need to report, and I think it would be a good idea for the mayor, Councilor Doherty, and myself, and maybe our city clerk to get together and do an executive summary. Because if we try to just give you everything that we got there, we'd have another work session. And I have several ideas that I want to, get going, but I don't want to take up the time right now to report on that.
No, and I thought that after the Thanksgiving holiday, then we can get together and do that. And we have some other stuff to go through. And
also, council needs to know that we have a book that our mayor has brought to give each one of you on housing, which is going to be very informative.
We'll be meeting on Tuesday to get all those materials. We brought you all back some materials to share, and then we'll do our executive summary and submit that. So, okay.
Excuse me, Mayor, did you give us a time when we're doing that?
Not yet. We'll set that up.
You'll let us know, okay?
Yes, I'll, since you're just getting back, we'll go ahead and set that up, depending on your time and stuff. Okay. Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very quickly, on the 11th, the mayor, myself, and a number of representatives from organizations around the city and other aspects of state government attended a meeting about federal impacts of food assistance and nutritional assistance programs that was hosted by none other than the vice mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor, for that, on behalf of the Community Foundation, to discuss the impacts that the impending cuts, which have not gone into effect, to SNAP programs would have on Albany County, and things that could be rallied and resourced. And although those nutritional assistance programs remain, it still, I think, is really important that that body of people was there to have that discussion. The mayor and I attended the Ivinson donor dinner, which was great, on the 17th. And again, as the mayor reported, worked on the community partner funding app alongside our counterpart in the county. And I think there aren't major changes to the content of it, other than it's going to be more clear for people how to properly submit it, fill it out. And I think is also going to allow us as counselors and ultimately adjudicators a clearer path in terms of that sort of analysis, and then ultimately distribution of those awards. And then, if you want to see a video of myself and Councilor Vigil and Chief Brown getting pied in the face, we did that last Friday for the Laramie Reproductive Health fundraiser. So that's it for now.
And Linda Devine is going to share that video with me, and I'll pass that along. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Bowling stole my favorite update. And so thank you. That was a lot of fun. So the Laramie Reproductive Health fundraiser was last Friday. I think they did pretty well in terms of raising money. And me and Councilor Bowling were proud to be able to help out with that. We missed Councilor Lockhart. He had a good excuse, though, so that's fine. And then last week I was able to help the vice mayor with some DDA applications, and so that was really great. I have my own work to do on Human Rights and Relations Commission, looking at candidates there. And then on December 3rd, I have the Albany County Transportation Authority meeting. So I'm looking forward to being able to provide updates about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilors, if you can please review the agenda. Are there any suggestions for the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, if we can go on to the regular agenda, any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, our work session is adjourned. Thank you very much.